building bridges across languages and cultures around the world. The Confucius Institute, also known as CI, is a non-profit educational organization that aims to provide teaching in Mandarin and Chinese culture. Named after the ancient Chinese philosopher who sought to increase access to education, the first Confucius Institute was established in 2004 in South Korea. And over nearly 2 decades, it has grown to 480 institutes across 6 continents. 8 years ago, the UWI Cave Hill campus added its name to the growing list of institutions of higher education that is home to a CI providing an opportunity for Barbadians and students from the Eastern Caribbean to learn about one of the world's oldest civilizations. Join us as we take you on a journey through the years of the CI at UWI Cave Hill. A desire to broaden the global reach of the UWI Cave Hill campus and the vision by the government of Barbados for every student to learn to speak at least one foreign language led to the establishment of the Confucius Institute at Cave Hill. The CI opened its doors in 2015 after several years of negotiations between Bridgetown and Beijing.
I'm Anthony Fisher. In 2008, I was hired by the then principal of the Cave Hill campus, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, as the first Director of Internationalization for the campus. And I was honored to be able to do a strategic plan of internationalization. Now, we're talking about the Confucius Institute, how it all began. And it didn't happen overnight. There was a whole context in which it was contemplated. When you talk about internationalization of the Cave Hill campus, you have to consider many things. You have to talk about how does the Cave Hill campus fit within the national developmental goals of Barbados? How does these goals translate to the larger region and its concerns? And in particular, how do you get the teaching of Chinese and Chinese culture integrated into what will be the future of the region?
The first task was to sell the idea to the government that setting up a Confucius Institute would be in the best interest of the country.
So it started with the Ministry of Education. Dr. Sylvia Henry was very receptive. She was in charge at that point. And then we moved on to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Student teas were part of the Chinese hospitality that made the conversation very cordial and productive. I remember discussing the ministry's role in the establishment of the institute, and I think we called it the center at that time. And I vividly remember discussing how the Chinese teachers would be selected, how many teachers would be sent to Barbados, along with supporting cultural resource materials. We were quite excited when we imagined the possible effect on the infusion of Chinese language and culture into our education system and the eventual impact on business in Barbados.
The years have passed in the interim. I eventually had a trip to China. I visited Hanban and talked to them. Obviously, in all this, there's a conversation with the Chinese government, the Chinese embassy about what we intend to do. And it was all made very much easier because Barbados had taken the strategic decision that it was going to embrace whatever were the possibilities, whatever were the opportunities in a renewed Chinese interest in the region and in the relationship with Barbados in particular. And so it got to the point where it became a talking point between then Prime Minister of Barbados and Xi Jinping when he visited the Caribbean. Confucius Institute was requested as part of the understanding on culture and education, and the Chinese were graceful enough to concede that.
This approval cleared the way for the opening of the CI at Cave Hill. Within 2 years, it became the first in the Eastern Caribbean to be certified to offer the internationally accepted test for Chinese proficiency, the Hanyu Shuiping Kaoshi, and associated tests. Additionally, the Institute successfully hosted the first regional conference of the CIs in the Caribbean. These achievements earned the CI the Confucius Institute of the Year Award in 2017. There were also other significant accomplishments early on in its operations.
The first major achievement we had was welcoming a high-level delegation in 2017 led by Dr. Xing Wei, Deputy Director General at that time of the Confucius Institute China headquarters, colloquially called Hanban. That visit included representatives from our Confucius Institute partner university, the China University of Political Science and Law, sometimes called CUPL, which was led by Professor Hugh Ming. He is chair of the University Council. This was the first time such a high-powered delegation visited Barbados and the Cavell campus from China. This visit followed our conclusion of the agreement establishing the Confucius Institute in 2014, of course under the leadership of then campus principal Sir Hilary Beckles.
不仅在2017年荣获了全球先进孔子学院的称号，而且以孔子学院为平台，拓展了我们两校多方面的合作，丰富了中巴两国深层次的人文交流。比如，我们举办了免费的中文课程，多次举办国际法模拟法庭大赛，开设了中国文化概论课程，举办了中国文化专题讲座等众多的活动。我们还大力培养巴巴多斯本土汉语教师，支持巴巴多斯学生申请中国政府奖学金，帮助巴巴多斯民众更好地了解中国文化和当代中国。
巴巴多斯孔院也为中国政法大学和西印度大学凯布希尔分校的交流起到了桥梁和纽带作用。比如中国和加勒比国际模拟法庭辩论赛成功举办，就促进了两校师生更深的交往和交流。
The CI has created a space for cultural exchanges between the two countries and for students from Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean to learn Mandarin.
The Institute has literally provided hundreds of Barbadians and Eastern Caribbean young men and women, some not so young, with the opportunity to gain one of the educational world's most valuable experiences, learning or at least becoming familiar with a foreign language. In this case, the millennial language of a millennial culture, Mandarin.
The Chinese have also embraced the opportunity to teach their culture while immersing themselves in Barbadian culture.
And it's first time for me to come to such a further away, remote places. Can I say that remote? It's very far away. And before I came here, I know nothing about Barbados. And now I became more and more like Barbados, alive Barbados. And I have been here for 5 years. And I think our job is here to let more students learn Chinese, more people, Barbadian people or Caribbean people, love Chinese culture and bring the two countries' people understand each other.
Proficiency in Mandarin would be an asset to Caribbean nationals, especially as the region was deepening relations with Beijing. It was also in keeping with the overall development policy of the government of Barbados.
What it allowed for us is to develop a program of bachelor science program in software engineering. Software engineering being one of the most in-demand professions in the world at this point. Because if somebody is a software engineer, they can sit right here in Barbados, sell their goods abroad. So in the context of establishing a Confucius Institute, knowledge of Chinese language and culture was critical and is still critical to that program, in that people spend 2 years here at Cavell campus. They take the basic courses that they have, along with Chinese language and culture. So when they get to China, they are one step ahead of their colleagues who had never gone. And after 4 years in China, they would have mastered the language to a proficient degree that they can interact with their Chinese counterparts once they've come back to the Caribbean.
One of the things we very actively do is to try to bring the persons who come to us, the students, in touch with some first-hand information about the experiences of those who have gone before them in China. Both students, basically the scholarship winners, and some persons who have made that transition from being a student in China to being a person working and living in China.
As further evidence of the growing influence in the region, Mandarin is also being offered at the CXC level.
It means that the people who determine the educational standards of the region have accepted that because of the influence of China, and because of its presence, because of all the Caribbean countries who are now with embassies in Beijing, it makes sense. It makes sense that, you know, we have people who are going to be qualified in the language and knowledge about the culture across the Caribbean. So it has expanded to influence our regional educational objectives.
This year has formed some kind of cooperation.
At least from 2017.
Yes,
at least from 2017.
Yeah. So that year we began to provide some help to draft the CCSLC, which is the 中学汉语水平能力证书考试. We are very happy. We start this from fall, I think, and we now in 2022 we finalize it. We finish it. And finish the draft and submit to the CXC, and we are very happy and proud for that. Thanks for our teachers' cooperation between Chinese teachers and local teachers work together to make it finished.
In addition to language, the Institute has built a working relationship with the various faculties on campus on various areas of cooperation. The Faculty of Law is one such example, and Cave Hill's partner institution in Beijing, the China University of Political Science and Law, has been a critical player in facilitating cooperation between the two countries.
The Confucius Institute, from its inception, had a very strong link to the law aspects of the China University of Political Science and Law, our partner university. Because we have a very strong law faculty. I believe the law faculty was the first faculty established here on campus. So it was only natural that we developed that aspect of the cooperation. We have a moot court, which has been going now since 2017, between the Faculty of Law and counterparts in China. During our tenure, we were able to facilitate the teaching of a course on Chinese law and institutions by a teacher in China to students here at the law faculty, and in return there is a teaching of a Caribbean course on constitutional law to students in China.
Over the last 8 years, the Confucius Institute at Cave Hill has established itself as a major player in education in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, and administrators are looking forward to further growth and cooperation in the coming years.
The Institute has become a mainstay in Cave Hill education, and I would say in Caribbean education. It is here to stay, and it is here to contribute to the well-being and the economic growth of the region.